am here. I am here. Welcome, welcome to Table Talk with Brenda Perryman. A very exciting show. Today, I'd like my co hosts to introduce themselves.
Robert Thomas, patent search consultant and the chairman of the Board of Zoning Appeals for the City of Detroit.
Daryl Buchanan.
Okay.
Cheryl, Cheryl Ajumu, creator of the Multicultural Media Luncheon during the Detroit Auto Show and producer of the upcoming Detroit Football Classic.
That's it. That's the television announcement today.
Wow.
She tell them a little about that.
Well, the Detroit Football Classic, it was originally launched back in, I think, 2003, 2004. It's a football game between two historical black colleges, two HBCUs, and my company secured the trademark about a year ago, and in 2020, our plan is to bring it back. We're going to have just a weekend of activities and football games, so we're working on that now, so.
That's fun.
How exciting.
Make sure you support it.
I'm a product of two HBCUs, so.
And I spoke at 20.
Oh, wow.
I did, and I loved it. I loved it. And the last one, they had the Rattlers of FAMU.
They had FAMU, I think, in Alabama State.
Alabama State. I spoke at both those colleges. It was just wonderful.
They're two
wonderful.
okay colleges. So.
Oh, Robert, put your microphone up so everybody can hear you. Anyway, we're going to start Table Talk with our notes, but before that, we're going to talk a little bit about what is going on federally. And it seems like that president guy is trying to start a war. He's firing people by phone or Twitter. He doesn't fire people to their faces because he's a coward.
The guy with the "you're fired" thing doesn't
The
fire
apprentice.
anybody.
No, the guy who said you're fired doesn't fire.
Right. That's crazy. I mean, but he had his little cobra action that he would do when he did it. And it's
Okay,
like,
make sure you're loud enough so Facebook Live can. I mean,
Oh.
the mic has nothing to do with
oh,
Facebook Live.
sorry. Hey,
Oh, that's right. I keep forgetting. Okay.
Cheryl, what were you gonna say?
Nothing. Just, this is kind of the standard of what is going on. I mean, it's not surprising to
Well,
me.
It kind of frightens me because a lot of this is reactionary, trying to get off the
Off
pages
topic.
about Stormy Daniels and then the other playmate who he had relationships and affairs with. I don't really care about that stuff, but people do. He was backed by the evangelical community who gave him a mulligan, which is a pass for it.
Yeah, what I do think is he may be more warmongering right now, but I don't think Congress is going to let him go to war. You still have to have congressional approval for a war.
That's
So
I
He can
thought
declare.
about that.
there's checks and balances in place. Now he is on the verge of going that route, but I don't think the Republican or the Democratic parties want that. So I don't think that's going to happen.
I think the country is war weary. We have been at war, a constant war. Seems like since the first Bush presidency. We've been fighting and fighting and fighting to no resolution. There's been no peace. You haven't seen where there's been any kind of advance of any kind of national agenda, so that these countries start to work together. And so I just think we, the American people, are war weary.
So, what do you think we could do? I think we should. We can do something as the people. I do. I think so.
Well, I think the only thing he has right now is an opportunity to. The only war he has is an opportunity to have a war on drugs with the opioids. He won't be allowed to do the.
Yeah, I mean, but who is he? He wants to execute the drug dealers. So does that mean that some of the big pharmaceutical, CEOs are going to be executed now?
Good luck with that too.
Yeah, I mean
So-
that's. I mean,
Because the
because,
Michigan Supreme, not the Michigan, but the Supreme Court is not going to allow you to execute somebody for
but not just
selling
that.
drugs.
I mean, there's this mindset that when you say drug dealers, you're talking about black
People
and
on the
brown.
street.
Yeah.
You're talking about black and brown people.
Yeah.
Black and brown people do not know how to synthesize heroin into opioids and make OxyContin and oxycodone or any of these other drugs that are, afflicting communities all across the country. So, who is these people that you're going to target?
Right.
They're just grandstanding, I believe.
That's
I don't
all
think
it
he's.
is.
It's
And I mean, he is a master.
not serious commentary.
Right. He is a master at deflection.
Yeah.
It's like,
Well, deflection for people with mediocre minds, I think.
true. Well,
Because we read through that.
there's still some people that really back him.
Oh,
that
I
really act like
understand. Well,
those are those mediocre
I don't
minds.
care if how rich they may be, how educated they may be. They still have something in it for themselves. War
at his
is
cabinet.
profitable. War is profitable.
Yeah.
Bankruptcy is profitable. I mean, at every stage, when somebody is losing something, somebody is gaining something. If you look at the housing bubble, there are a lot of people that lost everything. So we went through that whole turmoil of 2000. That you talk about the housing bubble and the crisis of 2008. There are a lot of people that made a lot of money.
Yeah.
Don't think that the value of our homes and everything else just evaporated. No, they went into other people's pockets.
And everything was on sale, so you could get it for dirt cheap.
Yeah.
And then when the market came back, you could sell it and make a ton of money.
Make a ton of
Yeah,
money.
And
we
a lot of them
see
bet
it in
against against the folks during the bubble, so they knew it was going to pop anyway, so they invested that way, so they made some money off of it.
Yeah, but I agree with you though, Brenda. I mean, this is very concerning. Just all these actions that are going on. I mean, this has got to be the most tumultuous White House that in my lifetime, and I've seen new bunch of presidents.
It's
Yeah.
unprecedented.
Going back to Eisenhower.
I
I
lived
don't
through-
remember Eisenhower.
I lived
but,
through Reagan.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
he's like lauded by so many people, but he really wasn't that good of a president to me.
No.
But this is the bottom of the barrel. There's a president who seems to read at a third or fourth grade level. He gets things wrong, so much wrong. He doesn't listen to people. He's like a spoiled brat. If you don't want what he wants,
He has a fit.
he has a fit. And to use Twitter, but I tweet him back.
Oh.
I tweet him back. I'd call him all sorts of names. It's amazing I'm not got.
And
But-
I'm waiting on somebody to knock on my front door.
Well, you see, he threatened to veto the $1.3 trillion bill Congress passed, and based off of they didn't address issues concerning DACA, and they didn't allow enough money for the wall. Yeah.
I want my wall.
Well, my thing is, they seem to ignore DACA, and I think that's important.
Yeah.
But,
Absolutely.
But locally, close to home, everybody, Detroit has bought part of the state fair, and they've made it possible for Magic Johnson's company to buy the other part. Now, I had guests on, I guess it was last week, a week before last week, who were talking about, it's a community group who they want to make sure that Detroiters were listened to when it comes to developing that state fair grounds property. What would you like to see happen with the state fairgrounds?
What is it currently? To vacant barren land?
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and they had some buildings that used to be to house the livestock and so forth.
I mean, how much input do the folks want to have into it? And
I'm asking you.
okay, I'm just saying, it's surprising that some development work like this one. Now you have a minority group, Magic Johnson, Marvin Beatty, and several other individuals came together, collaborated on a project, and they want to build on vacant land. I mean, I'm trying to figure out what do the people want there. What type of input do they want also on this project that's not public dollars?
Well, what has it historically been? It's been
Until 2009, it was just used for the state fair.
right, but I mean, it's a space for entertainment. I mean, when I think about what took place, on those grounds, I mean, I remember having that huge amphitheater there. And, I've seen everybody. I've seen, Earth, Wind, and Fire. I've seen the Jackson 5, perform right there, at that venue. So it's been always some type of, live, in terms of interaction, a lot of joy. Okay, so it should continue to be some type of entertainment district along with some retail. Because, when you think about Detroit, that's really what's missing. You're seeing pockets, but you don't see anything of the scale of, when we were growing up and we could go downtown and there were so many things to do downtown. Or you can go out,
Well, they're trying to bring that back, but I don't know. Cheryl, what do you think?
I'd like to see some entertainment. I know they're already working with Big Sean with Imagine Theaters with the other
That's
complex.
downtown.
Yeah, but I'd like to see something that is like mixed use, maybe some residential,
Right.
some retail, some entertainment. Kind of like if you've been to Atlanta, you know how I don't know what that's called, but
You're
it's
talking about,
Union Station or
Union
something
Sta-
like that.
yeah.
Something kind of like that. Something kind of like
Well,
that.
what I think is it's 149 acres of land. I believe Magic Johnson has 16. As long as he has his 16, particularly with the other minority partners of his that live in Detroit, they are able to develop off of that 16 acres. But now you have another 100 and 20 odd acres, something to do with. I'm sure some of that's going to be parkland, and I believe the proposal that Marvin Beatty and Magic Johnson proposed was an entertainment type of showing where you have a movie theater, multi-use buildings, both residential and commercial. But now you still have another 120 acres to work with. I believe some of it will be park space and other
Green
types of
space is
Yeah.
important, but they're also talking about it being a transportation hub for this transportation that will probably go up after my lifetime. That I mean, they imagine these things about. I have an issue with the people, not the people mover. What's that thing?
The
Q
queue
line.
line.
Queue line because it's so slow.
It's a toy train set.
I mean,
it just goes up
it,
and down.
it's too
Kinda
low
clever,
for,
but-
and it's not extended
I
out
like it.
there.
I like it, and I think it's going to eventually extend. I believe it came here to give people a visual of how these trains and these transit systems work, and it's going to drive mass transit in the future, coming from the airport to Detroit and things like that.
On a bus.
And if
Well-
first it's going to be a bus. They're going to invest more into it so it can be a train. You have to have a cause.
And the counties have to vote.
Well, yeah, you do, and if Oakland and Macomb, don't want to, come in and then skip them.
Well, Robert,
Washtenaw, Wayne, and Detroit can do it.
I rely on your expertise, but see, the way it has been put out to the voters is not, it doesn't, maybe it was the way it was put out, because I'm going to admit it. I voted against it.
Oh,
Well, it's folks I lived in D.C., lived in North Carolina, Virginia. We have these mass transit systems, and people don't know how they look, don't know how they operate. You have folks that haven't been outside of Detroit. Then they won't be voting on that type of stuff.
I've
we
been
don't
out.
want to give up our cars, man. I mean, come on, this is
And
the
that's a
Motor
whole nother
City.
industry that's
That's a
been
Motor City.
railing against mass transit is
Well,
the automotive industry.
But here's the thing: like other industries have realized, okay, are you in the car industry or are you in the transportation mobility industry? Okay, because when I was doing telephones for AT&T. All of a sudden they told us that if you're in the voice business, you'll be out of business. We're in the data business, and so voice and data were transmitted along the same lines. You need to start thinking about: are we going to be solely, a car company? Or are we going to get into mobility?
Well, Cheryl, you give events,
Right.
and they're downtown, in that downtown area. I would love to just be able to jump on a bus and take it. Don't deal with the parking. Just
Thank you.
I would love to do that. And right now, the way downtown is, I know that if I have to go to LCA, I am taking a Uber.
Well, just last weekend, a girlfriend of mine we decided that we were just going to do an adventure on the queue line. So we parked near, I guess, like Canfield or something like that, and then just took the queue line all the way downtown. And it wasn't as bad as we thought. We actually found it kind of convenient that you could kind of park far away. You just needed to know where the stations were, and then just pay your $1.50 and you could ride for 3 hours. But it was kind of convenient, and I thought about what if I was coming to a Tigers game? I could park kind of far away
That's
on the queue
true.
line, pay $1.50, get on and get back off as long as you're back on before it closes down. But they just extended the hours, so
What are the hours now?
I think it's like 11 p.m. or midnight
I
now.
believe I think they shifted to midnight.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I
So
have to
it's
do
it's
that.
convenient. I think it's
It's the
convenient
teacher in you.
if they want to start bringing in larger type of events like they just had the NCAA here, but
That's
Yeah.
true. That's true. And I learned something about LCA yesterday. Last night, my son told me that they put the on one of the walls in I don't know what place, but they have the ABA players from Detroit. They have a wall with that, and my
didn't
second
recognize that.
husband is on there.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay,
I
okay,
didn't
okay.
know. Oh man.
I will add that as downtown Detroit and midtown Detroit develop and overdevelop, because it's going to get crazy in that area, they're going to need the mass transit systems, and folks are going to rely on it continuously, and it's going to build more of a hype so it can
Well,
actually be
see-
extended.
And to that point, okay, you said they're going to be busting at the seams. So there needs to be some outlet, some release, some development away from downtown, so that now you don't overdo downtown
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
at the expense of other parts of the city. So if you extend it out to that's the farthest reach of the city.
Yeah.
Okay. So now that's all along Woodward,
Yep.
and now you start to develop all.
But
the
you're
way
building a
back
case
in
for it.
between.
You're building a case for the extension now and for mass transit with a mass transit train system here.
And that's a different mindset, you know.
Yeah, I don't mind. I mean, I've been taking subways since I was young. I mean, seriously, young. And I had to find my way on the subway. And I was like in 8th or ninth grade. And my thing is this, it was fast, it was convenient. I've seen people, and maybe that was because at one point the queue line was free, but after that, how often does it come? How can I get somewhere fast? If I park like on Canfield like you did, Cheryl, okay, let me get here. Let me hope that it's not crowded with a group and I can get on.
now they do have electronic signage in the station that lets you know how many minutes is going to be before the next train. It's kind of accurate, and usually it's between 6. It says 6 minutes, but we counted it was probably about 11.
Yeah.
11 minutes.
Oh,
And they actually when big events come into Detroit, they actually put an extra 2 or 3 trains on the track so it can limit the time that people are actually standing there.
Right.
yeah, you got to convince me. Now, my question, we have a question or comment. Curtis is on the line. Good morning.
Warning.
Good morning.
Good morning. You know, the things that you guys are talking about are good, but I think a lot of us, including myself, we forget about how much we suffered, taxpayers and retirees and our neighbors that have suffered to make this happen for the city of Detroit.
Yeah.
You know, so that's what we're thinking about. In addition to that, we're not included. And these rail systems bring very little benefit to the overall taxpayer. You know, all this stuff sounds good. It's what we had to sacrifice that was forced on us to make this happen. That's how we feel here in the city of Detroit. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you. And I agree. A lot of people do feel like that they've suffered, they've stayed, they've hung in there, and so forth.
And what we don't consider or don't remember is that at one point we did have a railway system.
Yeah.
That's when it was called the DSR, Detroit Streets and Railway. So we gave up all of that, for the convenience of having an automobile.
Yeah, for the automobile companies.
And now so there were some people that were thinking then, like, well, wait a minute, I don't want to buy a car, but they had to buy a car. Now we're going back in the opposite direction. So there was pain then, and there's going to be some pain now. And I mean, either way,
I still think that people are going to want a car.
Well, and you're not
Yeah.
taking that away from them. I
But
believe
you
it's
don't need a
going to be
deuce
here.
and a quarter.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
And on top of that, I would say that you're right about the train system back in the 1900s, and it was destroyed.
1900s.
No.
Listen, I was a little girl.
Like I said, I don't remember it was there. But I would say that
50s and
was it the
60s,
50s and
man.
60s the
Yes,
train
sir.
system was?
Yes,
Oh,
sir.
gee whiz! I never I've ridden on the train system here in Detroit.
Hey,
But I will say that the
him off of
automobile
Table
companies really derailed that whole project, even with the People Mover, when it's supposed to have been going out into the suburban areas, and the suburban areas didn't want folks to come out in
Detroiters.
those areas. Well, folks, I'm going to leave it to that.
Detroiters will get anywhere they want to get.
But I will say to the caller, Curtis, who just called in, you can't really say that to a Detroiter who has a job out in Macomb County or deep into Oakland County that has a job there and can't get there but by bus or have to walk that 8 miles where that article was last year or 2 years ago. You can't really say that it's not it's an unfair argument for those types of folks, and they're still voters and they're still taxpayers.
Yeah, I mean, there's a shared burden, that, to democracy and the citizenship. So,
Well, Smart has this new bus system
Fast
that called Fast.
and Reflex.
And what?
Reflex.
What's that?
Reflex goes from downtown Detroit to the airport and to other places, and it's like $3 from downtown to the airport.
Oh wow,
I
that's
hadn't heard of that.
Yeah.
wow.
I saw the fast bus when we were waiting on the queue line. We were wondering what it was as it sped past us.
So they
We were
go
like,
deep
"Dang."
into the suburbs.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they have a minimum amount of stops, and it goes fast because the bus goes faster than the queue line. Okay.
Yeah, that's true.
there are wrinkles that, have to be worked out. I mean, I don't
What?
think a lot of people know that there's still a lot of track that, have been paved over in the city of Detroit. We have rails. We have
Yeah.
trains and everything else, that ran from Pontiac, that ran to Ann Arbor, that went everywhere. And then we just stopped doing that because we had I-75 and we had I-94. But see, now younger people are saying, I don't want a car. Okay? I mean, both my sons have very nice cars, and these jokers never even get the cars washed. If my grandfather was alive, he would be having a fit. They don't even get their cars washed. It's the most amazing thing to me. I said, how do you take a young lady out in a dirty car, man?
She has a right.
And they don't care either. She don't care either.
Golly. Oh my gosh. Listen, something
And they
happened.
know my son. So.
Something happened that reminded me of Nathaniel Abraham.
Oh, yeah.
People
Yeah.
might remember Nathaniel Abraham
Yeah.
was a 12-year-old from Pontiac who was accused of killing somebody. He shot a gun. He killed somebody as a juvenile, and he eventually got out of prison, or he was in jail.
Yeah.
It was some kind of jail, I thought.
Juvenile.
Anyway, he got out, and I remember everybody was treating him like a king. And I saw him at an NAACP dinner. He was sharp. It was almost like he had his zoot suit on, and he was walking around, and everybody was just petting him. And next thing you know, he got back in trouble a couple of times. Now we have Devontae Sanford. And I'm curious about that because he got in a little trouble here. Didn't he get shot or something?
On the east side
Yeah.
of Detroit. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Back to
And
Christmas time.
yes. And then he moved to Arizona, and now they locked him up there.
Last year this time, I had a chance to meet him, and I sent you the picture of Devontae and myself from the event. We had an MBK, My Brother's Keeper event in Southfield, and he was the speaker. The most amazing thing about it, now he had never done this, and he had never spoken to a group as large as we had there for him that day. Now we had about 500 young boys in there from like 7th grade through 12th grade. To have that many young men sit there in rapt attention to listen to him. They didn't listen to anybody else speak that day the way they spoke to him.
But let's remind the audience what happened to Devontae.
Yeah.
he was accused, I don't know how old he was.
14.
14.
14.
He's the same age
Of
as Evan.
going into a house and murdering the people in
Four
the
people.
house. 4 people, including one of my former students, she was there. She and her boyfriend had come in there, and they never left. He admitted to doing it, but he didn't do it. And then hitman Vincent Smothers, he admitted to that crime. Now here's something you don't know about that too. I was contacted by Dateline NBC a few years ago when Devontae was in prison. They wanted me to talk about it. The reason how they found me was the fact that they did a story on this young lady who was murdered, and they went back to her school and they saw my name as being one of her teachers. They tracked me down and they found me, and the guy, I called him and said, "What is this about?" And he said, "Well, we don't think he did it, and we want to do a story on it." And I chose not to participate, even though I was called a number of times and I was sent emails, because I know the mother, I know the family. If the family wasn't going to participate, I wasn't going to participate.
But, go ahead.
But the point being, what do you think happens to these young men? Do you think it's a result? Well, I can't speak for Nathaniel Abraham. I can't really speak for Devontae, but they get out of jail. Devontae, didn't he get a settlement?
Yeah, 400 grand.
$400,000.
Well, one of the things that he talked about was what happened to him in that system. He became institutionalized. He was faced with just absolute horror every time that cell door opened.
For 8 years.
And he had to walk out of there. He said, "I have seen people stabbed while I'm standing in line, and then I just kept my eyes straight forward. So it was like nothing happened." I'm telling you, if you could have dropped a pin in that room, because those boys were paying attention to him like nobody I've ever seen. But the story was so powerful, and just the way he was talking about how, here's a guy that's 14. He was 14 years old. He's now 24 years old. He said, "I didn't go to high school. I didn't get a driver's license. I mean, I missed everything about being a kid."
And I would add to that the kid was 14 years old when he went in the penal system. He stayed in there for 8 years. He's a product of his environment. That's what he grew up on. And you're right. He saw these stabbings and all this violence while in prison. I want to know, did he seek or was he given psychiatric help afterwards? That's all he knows from the prison system.
Absolutely.
Since he was 14 years old, and for 8 years, you grew up in the prison system. Now, this incident that happened in Arizona, Nevada? Was it Arizona?
Yeah,
Nevada.
It was Arizona.
Yeah, and
Right outside of
it's
Phoenix.
purported to be alleged in a park or something in the desert. Now, I've known quite a few individuals that will go off into the parkland and the remote area and let loose, and not just in Detroiters. We're talking about the rural community, and the way they described it in the article. Some of that stuff looked kind of discriminatory. So
That he was just firing a gun, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What are your thoughts, Cheryl?
I was going to piggyback on Robert, and I was going to ask about psychiatric counseling. That, I mean, even though he got a nice sum of money, where was, I don't know, his parents or someone to kind of guide him, help him get some psychological? Because I think that's what's missing when kids are institutionalized like that. They need that psychiatric evaluation and counseling.
Listen, we as black people have such a stigma.
We won't go.
About mental health.
Tell me
Okay,
about it.
we will not deal with mental health in the same way that we will, get a flu shot or anything else. And I mean, and
We're
it's-
funny about that too.
and it's so prevalent, in our communities. I mean, I think a lot of the issues that we see, with our young people is that we have mass PTSD, existing
Absolutely.
within our communities. Think about it. A lot of our young people, have seen, death and murder and, friends and relatives and neighbors, and I mean their entire life.
Yeah.
There's an entire industry around, the funerals now. Where I mean, I'm watching
Or
where
the T-shirts.
of the T-shirt. But I saw somebody was like, if you go to a funeral now, and it's like you're getting like a little magazine about a person's life who's in their 20s. I mean, it's insanity. It's just insanity.
And I will add now, it used to be a stigma attached to it. I think we're getting away from it a little bit now. Particularly, there's an article probably about a month ago about that very same topic, where it's more of middle class African Americans is going to seek psychiatric help. Now, your poor class isn't, and you're right about that part. But the middle class African Americans are seeking additional help, so they won't be too suicidal.
You would have thought,
and have these all
you
all
would
these
have
other type of
thought
thoughts.
with all the young men, not young men, the people around him, that would have been the first thing they thought about, was getting this young man some help, and not about, I don't know what happened with the money. Maybe the family moved out there, but still getting him acclimated.
But that's not a custom of our penal system. They let you out and call it a day.
I know
don't care-
they do, but
And-
what about the people around him? He had lawyers and so
But
forth.
where's he from? Is he from what part of Detroit is he from?
East side.
Did he have both parents? Does he have a parent that's concerned about his well-being like that?
Yeah.
I
And
thought
does
they
he
were.
have a parent that even thinks along the lines of this kid needs psychiatric help after he's visited the penal system? Or does he treat it like a regular person that came out to the penal system and say, hey, such is life?
I think a lot of times, the family is just so happy to have, their family member back with them. And then, we're just going to love our way out of this, okay?
Yeah.
And not thinking about, I mean, I wondered, were they listening to what he was saying to those young boys? And they really should have been paying attention to the way those boys were, reacting to
Well,
him.
he probably
Because that
scared
was
them
powerful.
straight.
I remember that movie, Scared Straight.
Yeah, but
That whole
sometimes people, these cautionary tales that people have lived through, they could tell you about them. There's probably something maybe that happened when you were younger, when I was younger. I hear things today and I say, oh God, I'm not going to do that. I don't want that to happen to me. But you have to be able to hear that. Was he hearing what he gave this great speech and he told people, but what else could have been going on?
It really felt like, he was purging himself, of the horrors that he witnessed, while he was incarcerated.
Well, something that's unjust, I think, about young people who get out of prison. I've had some students who came to me personally, and I've mentioned this before, who said, Miss Perryman, I just wanted to tell you, I just got out of jail. I was in there for 2 years. Now, the counselors are not allowed to tell the teacher that. Now, I was a teacher who my students had a lot of freedom because they'd be working in their groups and working, separate groups all over the place, putting together scenes and stuff for drama class. And he was one of them. And he had to acclimate himself into dealing with kids who had not been incarcerated as long as he could. He really, really tried, but he never finished school. He never finished. But why do they make it so that the teacher doesn't know? I think the teacher should know about things like that. But then again, some people may hold it against them. He liked my class because, hey.
And it's against the law. You got some HIPAA laws out there that's gonna,
FERPA.
FERPA. But I will say that he went in at 14. He came out when he was 24. The kid is still a kid. He still got a 14-year-old mind that was developed in prison. He coming out, now he has this newfound freedom at, now a grown man considered in American society. He goes out in the middle of a field and starts shooting a gun like typical kids probably would do, particularly if you're from if you're from the hood in Detroit. These guys, folks always let loose. I remember I was a kid and, let me not.
What?
During the 4th of July, I think everybody popped off a gun or two. It was kind of common. It was common in my neighborhood. So
I lived in the hood, and
and we
I never
had
did
you had
that.
grown adults, encouraging individuals to shoot off guns, and it was common, particularly every 4th of July, But now,
Or
it's
New Year's
shunned,
I
and you
thought it
shouldn't do
was
it. New Year's Eve too.
firecrackers. You're telling me
yeah.
they're shooting guns on the 4th of July?
Yeah,
Yeah, Memphis, we did. Yeah.
Memphis. Yes,
We
they
did.
did.
We did.
Okay, let's talk quickly about Facebook. Well, I wish the best for Devontae. Really, I do. Because he was a victim.
Yeah.
But then again, too, let me just say this. I remember that he used to be able to stay out all types of times of night.
this is what I was leading to.
We got to take it back to the home. I'll be dog. I was a streetlight kid, like
Oh,
some
my.
people.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you had to be at least in front of the house.
I didn't have a curfew, so
I don't care. I mean, but many of us,
Yeah.
people in the
especially-
hood, we did.
Yeah.
The last whooping I got was for dribbling down the street when the street light came on, and my mom was standing on the porch. I'm like, hey mom,
that's funny.
I still get a whooping. I'm like, are you kidding me, mom?
Street light comes on.
I'm 14 years old.
Hey, Cheryl.
That
you-
race
you
car
all
track
had to-
around the back.
You had curfews, right?
Yeah, I had curfew, and I broke it a couple of times. Like once I got to college, but after that first time, and they take everything away, it was kind of like, okay, you just gotta abide by these rules. And then I realized as I got older, it was for my safety.
Right. We have to get through that part of it. But I just want to say that he was in a situation where he was allowed to he had more
Yeah.
freedom than the average 14-year-old.
Right.
Which means that even younger than that, he had freedom. Just like when he was 14. You never know what that age started off at. It could have been 8 years old, and he's out in the middle of the street at nighttime, and that's a product of his environment. It's the environment he was raised in.
Maybe Jean is on the line. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm enjoying your subject today.
Whatever we're doing.
Oh, my goodness. Okay.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay, first of all, I just need to say something about this name, the Hood. That bothers me. I don't like hearing the Hood. Now, I grew up in Detroit, and I still live in Detroit, and I don't consider Detroit a hood. I grew up in a neighborhood and in a community. I do believe that words have power. If you say hood, to me that means anything goes. It's a ghetto. It's a slum. It's someplace that people don't want to live anymore. Okay, we
Good
move to the
point.
suburbs, where we go, and that now it's a hood. Okay, I don't like that because I'm sorry.
I said that's a good point. I was thinking,
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking of it like that.
In a negative connotation.
I wasn't thinking of it like that. It gave I thought of it as giving a little toughness to me, because I'm not, people have a tendency to think that you might have, just like my students, when I first started teaching, some of them said, oh, I bet you were a debutante. Debutante. But anyway, go on.
Yeah, but you understand what I'm saying. You grew up in Detroit, just like I did. Heard you say it before, and you could have been a debutante and grew up in Detroit. Okay, there was no
Yeah,
issue there.
yeah.
And I do understand that you're
True.
saying that indicates being soft or a snowflake or something. However, when people hear that word hood, there is a real connotation to it. I don't want to tell anybody because I live in Detroit, I live in a hood. Because I don't live in a hood. I live in a neighborhood. And I do believe we need to put neighbor back on the hood. That means that you care about where you live and you care about what goes on when you live, where you live.
I agree.
I was putting
Hood is just a tough area for gangs and barbecue pits on the front porch and pit bulls and all that stuff like that. I don't like that connotation. I really, really don't.
Okay.
Well, when I mentioned it the first time, I was putting it in the context of where I was at the time, and it was a hood. It was a neighborhood,
But
it is not that
understand.
many neighbors around there that really cared about the other folks, the little young guys hanging around in the neighborhood, late at nighttime and doing what we want when we want to do it. It wasn't. I didn't grow up. Now I grew up in a neighborhood, living in a neighborhood, but at that current time, it wasn't. It wasn't that.
I want Jean to finish.
Oh, I thought she was.
Good morning, Jeannie. Continue.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I understand what he's saying, but that's where he grew up. However, Detroit is looked at almost as a broad brush as a hood now. I'm telling you. I mean, we're all grown people anymore, and most times when you say, I live in Detroit, automatically, my hood is over on so-and-so street, or my hood is on, and it's not true. We have some very, very nice communities and neighborhoods in Detroit, and for the city to come back as people want it to, I think we need to drop those words. Words have power. They really, really do. And nobody wants to say that they live in a slum or a ghetto. That doesn't sound good. And then when you think you live there, that's when you get these ideas that it's okay to hang out in the street when you're 8 years old to 12 o'clock at night and all that. And all this stuff to go back to the family. The family has to impose rules on these kids. That's where you get the Nathaniel Abrahams and all these other folks, because people are not adhering to what we all, and you all on the panel said that you grew up with. You had the street lights. You had some rules. And you lived in Detroit, and you had black parents and black neighbors and all that kind of stuff. Now, what happened? Where did the ball get dropped? The ball got dropped because we are too lax. We want to go along with what kids are talking about instead of what adults are talking about. We were not, I never referred to my neighborhood as a ghetto or a slum. I never did. And I grew up on the North End, which may be considered now a hood or something like that. But it was no problem there. And we had rules and regulations, and we all turned out, most of the people I grew up with turned out to be very good people. So that's all I'm saying is, as adults, I think we need to stop following what kids say and using, all this nomenclature that kids use and all this kind of stuff, plain old language that doesn't really mean anything, because that is where stuff starts to deteriorate, in my opinion, and we won't all feel like we need to run out and live in the suburbs. And I'm not really going down on anybody living in the suburbs. You should be able to live wherever you want. But who calls Oak Park a hood? Who calls Sawfield a hood?
We need to bring Gene on the show.
A hood? Nobody.
We don't. Okay, well,
And,
okay.
you
Thank you, Gene. I really want to get to this next topic, but I
Surely.
thank you. You made me think about that. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Thanks a lot,
Bye.
Gene.
I want to get to the Facebook deal. You see, Facebook shared a lot of things that shouldn't have been shared, and I know people who are getting off Facebook. I got a long letter from one of my Facebook friends in California, and she said because of what has gone on, she's no longer going to be on Facebook. They think they share, they've shared too much and with that company. But here's my thing. There's certain things on Facebook that people answer. I don't like anyone to say, name the street you grew up on, or what year were you born, or your mother's name. People ask those kind of questions on Facebook all the time, and I don't answer because I don't know if that's legitimate. Because, in some places when you're applying for stuff, you have to give these passwords, you have to give these clues, and some of the clues are just like that. The name of your first pet.
Right. I think that just coming from an advertising background, I know that the reason that they need those numbers is so that they can go to a corporation and say, we've got 30 million users, and you can place an ad on our site and you can pay us $300,000 to reach these people. So it's all about getting that advertising dollar. That's where all that's coming from, because the more numbers you have, and now you have to quantify that these people, these numbers that you have, actually are, people that can buy your product. So it's all about that.
And I'm going to add that it's not just Facebook. I mean, Facebook's not the only character here. You're talking about almost every social media site does the same thing. They sell the names and the viewership of the likes and stuff like that with other folks to market, like Cheryl just said, for monetary gain. So
do you have to pay, what do you have to pay for on Facebook? I know if I want to boost a post, I would have to pay for that. But besides that,
if it's, say for instance, I'm a corporation, and I've got a new product or a new shoe or something coming out, Facebook will come to me and say, we can target and we can find out African American males between the ages of 18 to 34 who want to buy your shoe. You can place an ad there, and we can put that ad targeted, and depending on how many people they have, that's what that rate is based on. So you could pay anywhere from 100,000 to 2 million. It just depends on the number of people who are going to see, the number of eyeballs that's going to see that ad.
Well, I think that Facebook is rigged anyway, because any website I go on, say if I go on I'll just use Nordstrom's or Neiman Marcus or something, that shows up on my Facebook page.
You like something,
Or you just look at it. You
Yeah.
said, let me see what they have on sale.
Mm-hmm.
Next thing you know, and then that same thing you looked at
Shows
keeps
up
on
again.
haunting you
Yes.
every single day.
and it will follow you on Instagram. It'll follow you on Tumblr. It'll follow you on just about every other social media site out there.
But did you think that goes along with the territory, or would you like to see changes?
I think it's part and parcel of, this whole information society that we're in now. I mean, it's about information. It's data. And they're data mining, and all it is being able to demonstrate, our ability to reach a certain, strata of the population. We can segment it out for you. We can tell you exactly who buys what, where, what time of the year. So,
They
and all
want
of
your
that,
name,
it's-
gender, date of birth, email, or mobile number.
And
I don't know how they got my mobile number, but I took it off.
it's not going anywhere. They may change up the format of how they go about doing it, but it's not going anywhere. They're going to
they're
still
making
make
money.
money and market off of
Yeah.
that type of information. It's not going anywhere.
No. That genie's been let out of the bottle and it's never going back.
In fact, I just want to take a little step further. As technology advances itself, or we advance technology, we're going to go further into that information. That's not going anywhere. Our generation, my generation, has grown up on it. Now it's new to older generations, but my generation and under, we grew up on it. So
How
a lot
long
of that
have you
stuff
been on Facebook?
for gee whiz, since it started,
I've been on there since 2010.
college.
I've been on it since 2005 or 6, when
Yeah,
they first started. Because one of my students, he sent me a message, but I couldn't read it unless I got on Facebook. And the second I got on Facebook, everybody saw I was on Facebook. So
And it started as a college platform, so you
Yeah.
had to be in
Right.
college to even have had the college
this student
address,
was in high
email
school.
address to even get on.
Right.
Yeah.
Initially.
So I just think it's a lot of information. Some people have developed their personas through Facebook. They have lived through Facebook. They,
And when we have something called social influencers, they
Yes.
get paid by companies to share their experiences on social media, which is now becoming, taking everyday people and they're, making tons of money.
Okay, now how do I do that? That's,
Yeah,
that's
how to
Well,
get
you
out.
have to have a certain number of
Followers.
followers,
Right.
maybe more than 1 million. Sometimes you
Right.
got 23
And
million.
it's interesting. So you can do something as easy as having a beard. A black man with a beard
That you wanna
which is,
braid.
which is coming back into fashion. But they will pay you.
working on mine.
You have some companies that will pay you to advertise their product.
Right.
Right.
And so they can do that same thing with folks with gray hair. They can,
Or, just
they can-
there are young ladies who they do makeup
with glasses on.
applications, how to do.
there's folks out there that like that.
Yeah, and companies pay them. They're
Yeah.
just doing a makeup session on
Right,
YouTube, and
right,
they've
right.
got a lot of viewers. And now cosmetics companies are paying them to use their product to do their makeup application on YouTube.
Right. We have a call. We have Linda on the line. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, just to let you know, the way they target people now is nothing new, but we used to do it the old way. I worked for a book publishing company in the 70s, and we used to call it list rentals. People would call in to the book publishing companies, and they may say, I want everyone you have with the last name beginning A through G. And guess what? It was 2 people that had to get that information, and I was one of them. And we would have to go in and get all the customers from A through G, but we had to key punch the information in, and then we would send this large book to whoever requested it, and then the fee would be calculated according to how many people was in A through G. So it's nothing new. We just used to do it the old school way.
Right.
But you all have a great day.
Oh, you too.
Thank you. Thank you.
I mean, there used to be a company, Brussers. It's right down there in the New Center area. And that's kind of what they did. They compiled all of that
Yeah,
information.
yeah, they did.
You know,
They
so,
did.
you're
I
right,
used
there's
to.
nothing new about
I had a summer job with R.L. Polk for 2 weeks.
In Polk, right?
Anyway,
2 weeks.
2 weeks. I was addressing envelopes. I had this list of names of people, and because you had good handwriting, which I did before computers, you had to address envelopes, and I cannot have a job where I do the same thing all day. I can't do it. Listen, I want to give a shout out to all the young people who are going for that march for our lives tomorrow.
Yes.
I think it's going to be good. I think it's going to be big. I'm wondering if the legislators will pay attention to what they want.
Hopefully they do, because if they're not paying attention, these young people will be voting very soon.
Yeah.
And even the ones, there are some that are already voting, and there will be some that are about to start voting. And, the best thing that I'm seeing about this is seeing a political awareness start to come about in these young people that I haven't seen in a very, very long time.
Yeah, I would say that, just to interject slightly, I don't believe the politicians, particularly the Republican Party, is going to buy into it, because it's off election cycle, number one. These kids won't be voting for another, year or two,
Well,
maybe
some of
three,
them will
maybe
be
four.
voting this year, though.
But that topic's going to die down, and it's not going to take until we have another crisis for these folks to actually pay a serious attention to it. I don't think they're going to pay attention to these folks at all. They're going to buy into their own base, which is senior citizens and folks in rural America, and yeah. But but until
Shut up.
until another 4 to 8 years occur, I don't think they're going to do anything about that. It's going to fall on deaf ears. You're going to have Democrats out there with them, cheering them on, but folks not going to listen to them.
And you know what? Nobody listened to us either. And I came from a generation that we walked out of school. We protested. And I went to a Catholic school, okay? And we would march and protest, and it just became a part of our culture. That's who we were. We were radicalized as young people, and it carried over. Now,
Absolutely.
I do say this. We have been co-opted as a generation, and a lot of things that have happened are really our fault, okay? And I take the blame for that, because we took our eye off the ball. We were raised to be soldiers, okay? When we come out of the generation of Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and Stokely Carmichael, H. Rap Brown, these are the people that were influencing me as a 12, 13, 14-year-old, okay? So then, I get to college because they fought for things and got me into college. The doors opened up wide. We got into college, and it was like there were more black kids walking around at Michigan State University probably than they've ever seen in their life, okay? And probably to this day, there probably aren't as many. But then we got into corporate America. We start buying into the whole meism of the time, and then we got co-opted by the corporate greed of the time.
I think
that a lot of people did, and I think that there are people who didn't. When you go and you work I used to be teased because I worked for social, I was an educator. I was just a teacher, or people who were just social workers. We were still trying to get some change out there. We still were trying, but we got to end. It's time for the show
But
to
it's
come.
you got to tell a story though. You got to continue to tell the story, because it didn't happen with my generation. With folks kept telling those types of stories.
And I let you down.
I did.
And I
did.
let you down.
My students could tell you.
You weren't
I
one of
told
my teachers.
the story. They know my. Well, you
but to those young
you weren't
people-
fortunate.
I was in the hood. son.
Okay. Good luck to my. Oh, shut up. Shut up. Anyway, I mean.
I grew up on 12th Street, and it was not
Okay.
the hood.
I will see you next
Yeah.
week. More table talk next week.
See you next week, guys.